On.
Hello, guys. Welcome to this week's edition of the Big Game and Box Score podcast, run by your two hosts, Cole and Brian. Hope everyone is having a great week. If not, hope this episode can make it a little bit better. As always, please be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, as it would greatly help us out on the YouTube algorithm. College football season is just right around the corner. So, if you want to stay up to date with our stuff, then just hit that subscribe button so you never miss out on one of our videos.
What's going on, everybody? And like Cole said, welcome to another episode of the Big Game and Box Score podcast. And today we'll be doing our third part of our four-part series where we go over each of the Power Four conference predictions and our top five players each position. This week's episode, we're going to be going over our Big Ten predictions and our top five wide receivers in college football.
Right, you are, Brian. It's going to be a great one today. Please be sure, before we get started, please be sure to comment down who do you think wins the Big Ten this year and who are your top five wide receivers in college football.
Yep. For those who tuned into our last two episodes, we'll be doing this episode in the same format as we did with the last two. But for those who haven't heard and haven't been here for the last two episodes, this is how we will do this. So first, we're going to be going over our favorites to win the conference, and this time, say, of course, will be the Big Ten conference. Then we got the playoff contenders in for each of the conferences. We got the teams who are going to be bound for a progression this year and bound for a step forward. Then we got the regressions, the teams that'll be bound for a step back, and then we got our dark horse, which team in the conference is going to be a dark horse to maybe make some noise that not a lot of the media or anybody else in the college football world isn't really talking about.
All right, so without further ado, let's get into our Big Ten predictions. So, if you guys tuned into our last two episodes in terms of the conference predictions were pretty much the same. You know, we had one team that was the favorite, and that same team, both Brian and I ended up picking to win that conference. This time, it's going to be a little bit different because the Big Ten and the SEC have multiple teams that you could pick as the favorite to win it all. So, for my personal favorites to win the Big Ten, I have three teams. I have the Ohio State, I have Oregon, and I have Indiana. So, starting out with the defending national champions and the Indiana Hoosiers, while they do lose the Heisman Trophy winner in Fernando Mendoza, along with a lot of other guys, receivers Omar Cooper and Elijah Surratt and their running backs and a lot of the guys on their defense like D'Angelo Pons and Caden Fisher. They return a lot of that through the transfer portal with quarterback Josh Hoover, who I think can be really good if he cleans up his interception problem, which knowing Signetti, he can definitely turn around issues like that. They also bring in wide receiver Nick Marsh from the transfer portal to make a 1-2 punch at receiver with Charlie Becker. They also bring in running backs from the portal to replace the production of Kalen Black and Roman Himby. They also return four of their five starters on their offensive line. While they aren't as good at positions like linebackers and secondary, they will still be really, really good at those positions. As in their secondary, they return guys like Jamari Sharp, who had the game winning interception against Miami in the national championship. They also bring in AJ Harris from Penn State. So I'm really excited to see what the secondary can do. On their D line, they bring in two edge rushers from Kansas State. And while they will also be taking a step down, they will uh, that D line will still be a force to be reckoned with. Now on to my second team that I have as one of my favorites to win the Big Ten, the Ohio State Buckeyes. When is Ohio State never not a contender? You know, I swear they year in and year out have the most talented team in college football. It's insane how much talent comes through Ohio State. They return two players who I think are Heisman candidates in Julian Sand, their quarterback, and their star generational wide receiver, Jeremiah Smith. They also bring back guys like Bo Jackson at running back, who rushed for 1,000 yards as a true freshman despite not starting the first few games. They also bring back at running back Isaiah West, who him and Bo Jackson can be a really good 1-2 punch for them. They also bring in Jacoby Jackson from the transfer portal. And at receiver, they bring in guys like Kyle Parker and Devin McEwen, also bringing in Chris Henry Jr., who could probably end up being a day one contributor because he's that talented. They also field an offensive line that is looked at as a Joe Moore Award contender. That O line includes guys like projected first round tackle Austin Steverfield. Regardless, this will be an elite offensive line. On the defensive line, they return a lot of veterans that are, or also add in a lot of veterans that are fourth and fifth year players, and return guys like Kenyatta Jackson and Edric Houston. Their linebacker group, while it won't be what it was with having Sonny Styles and Arvell Reese, two guys that were top 10 picks, it will still be an elite linebacker group headlined by Christian Allegro, the guy that they picked up from Wisconsin. Should be a really serviceable replacement, more than serviceable replacement. And they also added guys like Peyton Pierce and Riley Pettijohn. So this linebacker group will still be more than competent for Ohio State. And then we get to their secondary. They bring in guys like Terry Moore to replace Caleb Downs at safety, and they also return Jermaine Matthews and Devin Sanchez, who I can be up there as one of the best corner duos in college football. While this Ohio State defense probably won't be what it was last year, as they lose three guys who were drafted in the top 11 in the first round, I still think this will be a very elite defense just because how much I trust Matt Patricia. And finally, I have, rounding out my three favorites to win the Big Ten, I have the Oregon Ducks. Is this finally the year that Oregon breaks through? We'll see. They return quarterback Dante Moore, who is looked at by many as the first overall pick, along with surrounding him with a lot of elite weapons, such as Jordan Davison and De'Aaron Hill at running back, two guys that rushed for over 500 yards as true freshmen last year. They also return it Evan Stewart, DeCorian Moore, and Jeremiah McClellan at receiver, while adding in Iverson Hooks from the portal and retaining Jamari Johnson, who should be a more than competent enough replacement for Kenyon Sadiq. This will be up there as one of the best, if not the best, pass catching groups in all of college football. As for the offensive line, Oregon, just like Indiana and Ohio State, field a potential Joe Moore Award finalist at the offensive line. Their defense is looked at to be one of the best in the nation, with them returning their 2D tackles in Alexander and Amari Washington, while also having guys off the edge like Mateo Uyungale and Tatum Tuatoy. Their linebacker group, while it will be down a few notches, will still be serviceable. And their secondary should be up there with the best in the nation as they return guys like shutdown corner Brandon Finney Jr. and get elite safety Coy Parrish from the transfer portal. Is this finally the year that Dan Lanning breaks through and wins a national championship and establishes himself as one of the premier coaches in college football? Only time will tell. We will just have to see.
Alrighty, so for my three favorites to win the Big Ten Conference this year, I have the defending national champions, the Indiana Hoosiers. I have the Oregon Ducks, and I have the defending champion, I have the champions from 2 years ago, the Ohio State Buckeyes. I'm not going to emphasize the because, as everyone knows, I'm a Michigan fan. But let's start with the Buckeyes. This team is absolutely loaded. This team has got talent all across the board, and Ryan Day has shown time and time again for the last couple of years that he's been the most winningest head coach in college football. I think that continues this year as they retain starting quarterback Julian Sayin and superstar wide receiver Jeremiah Smith, who's the best receiver and arguably the best player in college football right now, the only most talented player in college football right now, and the most valuable player in college football as well. We all know how good Jeremiah Smith is. We all know how good Julian Sayin is. However, there's a lot of underrated pieces on this team with, of course, Bo Jackson at running back, who's taking the starting job now this year, alongside Isaiah West, who I think is gonna be a really, really solid backfield duo. I think those two are gonna get it done. Especially Jackson. I think he's gonna be in for. I think if he gets over 200 carries, like just look out. He's gonna go. He could go for easily within 14, 1,500 yards in that range. They also picked up a couple underrated receivers in the portal with Kyle Parker and Devin McEwen. Plus, they have Brandon Innes still, who's a really underrated receiver. They're all line highlighted by two potential first round picks in Luke Montgomery and Austin Searval, I think is how you pronounce his name. And then they got on the edge Kenyatta Jackson. I think he's going to be in for a huge year. And like Cole said, they lost their two linebackers as they were both top 10 picks in the 2026 NFL draft in Arvell Reese and Sonny Styles, but now they've got Christian Aligero from Wisconsin, who's now going to be highlighting the linebacking core. Oh, and don't forget they also have Bo Atkinson too to pair with Kenyatta Jackson. That's going to be an insane edge rush duo. And then the secondary, they have a great secondary. They retained Jermaine Matthews and Devin Sanchez, plus we have Earl Little to play the nickel in the secondary. That's going to be arguably the best. This could arguably be the best secondary in the Big Ten. And then you got Terry Moore and Jalen McClain at safety. Like this team all around is very talented, and they're going to be a team to look out for once again this year because they have been for a while. And now we got the Indiana Hoosiers. I will admit about the Hoosiers, they did lose a lot of pieces given that I mean the norm of the net of like national championship teams losing a lot of pieces, but they didn't lose too many pieces to where I think this team will fall off very much. Like they have a really they like of course, obviously losing your Heisman winner Fernando Mendoza is never easy, but Josh Hoover, if he can, like, I think Josh Hoover's got an excellent arm, and he's a very dead-eye accurate too. If he can work on his decision making and cut back half the turnovers, he's gonna, or even a quarter of the turnovers, he's gonna be in for an excellent season. They also got a backfield lined up by Lee Beebe, who returns, plus Turbo Richard they got in the portal. And then they got a really, really well-rounded receiving core with an elite duo with Nick Marsh and Charlie Becker, and then plus Shaz Preston with, of course, Preston and Marsh they got in the portal. And then the O line is gonna be is definitely is easily one of the best in the Big Ten. And defensively, they lost Michael Kamara. They still have they picked up AJ Harris in the secondary to pair with Sharp, who had the game winning interception in the national championship. That's gonna be a great secondary. And the front seven, while it's not gonna be the same as it was last year, still should be really solid. And then we got the Oregon Ducks, who this team, I mean, this is in my opinion the most well-rounded, most talented team in the Big Ten. It's just do they have what it takes to win the national championship this year? And of course, obviously, I love Dan Lanning. I think he's an excellent coach, but he certainly is not to the caliber of a guy like Ryan Day or Kurt Signetti, who of course have been national championship winning coaches the last 2 years. And and of course have been showing up more in big games. But I feel like Oregon, I think this really could be the year. Like highlighted by Dante Moore, who was supposed to be a top five pick in last year's draft, but returned to college for another season, for one final season, one final ride. Then you got highlighted by a really, really good receiving trio with Evan Stewart, DeCorey Moore, and Iverson Hooks, plus Jamari Johnson. That's four dynamic weapons for Dante Moore, plus a really solid backfield with Davison and Hill. They're pretty solid running back duo. The O line is still one of the best in the Big Ten, and the defense, man, the D line especially with Mateo Uliagoli, Armori Washington, Bear Alexander, like that is scary. Those get like that. Like look out for quarterbacks in the Big Ten if you're dropping back in the pocket. And the secondary, even though they lost Dylan Thieneman to my Chicago Bears, they did pick up Coy Parrish, who I think was an excellent portal addition. And these Ducks are ready to make a run this year.
All right, so all right, so I actually do not have any Big Ten teams as playoff contenders. I have the three conference favorites, but I don't believe that the Big Ten has any teams that are quite on that playoff contender level. So I'll just pass the mic to Brian for his potential Big Ten playoff contenders. But for me, I don't have any.
Alrighty, I have two Big Ten playoff contenders that I'm going to be going over. I got the USC Trojans and my Michigan Wolverines. Let's start with my boys, shall we? I think we loaded up very, very well. Like, of course, we came into this offseason with so much drama and with Sharon Moore and all the drama and controversy. But then we picked up Kyle Whittingham, and he knows how to build together a squad. He's a two-time big Pac-12 champion, and now he comes to the Big Ten, ready for a big step up. This team's got a lot of talent across the board, especially on defense, where we have a really good secondary with Jair Hill and Rod Moore returning in our secondary. Um, we have a couple, and then of course on the pass rushers, we did lose Derek Moore, but we did get John Henry Daly, who has worked with Kyle Whittingham, of course. So he of course was recruited by Whittingham at Utah, and he followed him to Ann Arbor. And then we still got a really solid D line. Our linebackers, we did lose Ernest Hausman and Jay Sean Barham to the draft, so that's gonna be a bit of a drop off. But either way, I think our secondary and D line certainly make up for the losses of the linebacker core. Our O line's still solid. We brought back Evan Link, who was one of our Evan Link got another year because obviously he was injured last year, so he gets another year. And then the Wolverines are a very underrated set of skill positions. We picked up Jamie French from the portal. We've got Andrew Marsh, who I think is going to be in for another big year. Plus a very dynamic backfield duo. Jordan Marshall returns for his junior season, and Savion Hyder, the number one running back recruit in the 2026 class. And of course, Bryce Underwood. He is locked and loaded. He's ready for year two. He had an all right freshman year. He definitely could have had some better moments. He definitely could have been better in some moments, but he also could have been worse. But I think he's going to be in for a big season. Go Blue, baby. Then we got the USC Trojans, who I think the big thing holding this team back is defense, because this team, on offense, this team's loaded per usual. Despite the two wide receivers to the draft in Makai Lemon and Jacoby Lane, plus Jay Fair, so that's actually three. And Lake McCree at tight end. They loaded up really nicely with weapons. They have Zechariah Williams, they picked up in the portal, freshman Trent Mosley. And that's which is gonna be a really solid duo. They still have King Miller and Waymon Jordan in the backfield, and Jaden Mayava. I really like Jaden Mayava. The one thing I will say about Mayava though, is Mayava really does struggle in the big games. I think Mayava will be in for a better season, and just even though he does need to clean up on the turnovers in big games and make a little bit better decisions at times, he's got incredible arm. He's got great pocket presence, and I think he will have another big season. And again, as long as Lincoln Riley can finally fix up that defense, man, watch out for the USC Trojans this year.
All right. Coming in as my dark horses in the Big Ten, I have three Big Ten dark horses. I have the USC Trojans, the Michigan Wolverines, and the Washington Huskies. For USC, for all these teams, there's some factors for each team that I think is going to have to swing their way for them to be a contender for the playoffs. Starting off with USC, their X factor is this defense going to be as Lincoln Riley's advertising it? You know, he's saying that this is the best defense he's ever had at USC, yada, 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 all that. Will they actually, be that? They did hire defensive coordinator Gary Patterson as their new DC, so that makes me feel like this defense can be really good, but the question is, will they be? They return quarterback Jaden Mayava, who needs to, like Brian said, needs to clean up his act of disappearing in big games. They do return most of their running back room in Jordan Miller, Riley Wormley, and also add in a true freshman and Deshaun Reddox. Will be a very good running back room. Their receiver core will drop off as they lose their top three receivers, including Biletnikoff, a winner, Makai Lemon, and draft pick Jacoby Lane. Their offensive line will be really good and another potential Joe Moore Award contender. Their defensive line, linebackers, and secondaries are all expected to take step ups from last year, obviously. Hopefully, they can actually tackle this time, but we'll just have to see about that. But yeah, this USC team be really can be really good if their defense takes that step up that Lincoln Riley says that he thinks they will. Next up, the Michigan Wolverines, Brian's Michigan Wolverines. The X factor I'll say for this team is Bryce Underwood's. Will Bryce Underwood take that first step up? That next step. Where are my words? That next step up, and can they survive this brutal schedule? I'm gonna be talking about this Michigan team later on. Just a warning, Brian. But they play a daunting schedule as they have to play Oklahoma, Iowa, Penn State, Indiana, Oregon, and Ohio State. That's a pretty brutal schedule. I could see this team going surprising people and potentially going 10-2 if they take that step up that I think they can, but they I could also see them regressing and going 7-5. They have the talent, no problem. No question they do. Bryce Underwood has potential. He just needs to be able to tap into it. They also returned Jordan Marshall at running back, who had 4 straight 100-yard rushing games last season. They also return Andrew Marsh at receiver and also add in Utah transfer J.J. Buchanan and Jamie French from my Texas Longhorns. Michigan's defensive line, while they do lose guys like D tackle Rayshon Benny and defensive end Derek Moore, they add in guys such as nose tackle Trey Pierce and first team All Big 12 edge rusher John Henry Daly, who had almost 12 sacks last year. Their linebacker group should be solid as they add in guys like North Dakota State Nathaniel Staling and Utah's Smith Snowden, which were needed because this group was returning 0 starts from last season. Their secondary should be solid. They add in Memphis's safety Chris Bracey while returning corners Jair Hill and safety Rod Moore. Overall, this Michigan team varies. How well will they do in year one under Kyle Whittingham? Does Kyle Whittingham have what it takes to handle a job at a place like Michigan? And can Bryce Underwood take that next step that Michigan desperately needs him to? All right. And as for my final dark horse, I have the Washington Huskies. After some shenanigan with Damon Williams all the way back in January, where, he tried to enter the portal but got held out, he returns back after settling stuff with Washington and looks to build off his last 2 seasons as a starter. Washington's running back, while they do lose Coleman to the draft, they add in players like Jaden Lemur and from Oregon, and they also add in 2 true freshmen in Brian Bonner and Kuwait Carr. This running back room, despite the loss of all the production on their running back room from last year, they could very much match last year's production despite losing their star running back in Jordan Coleman from last year. Their receiver room, while they are more experienced than last year's receiver room, they do need a feature wide receiver to emerge after the loss of Denzel Boston. Their offensive line is once again a Joe Moore Award contender. Their defensive line, yeah, their defensive line returns 2 starters from last year and add in 4 through the portal. It should get back to what it was in previous years before last year when they were banged up. Their linebacker room, they have 5 guys who started last year at some point coming back, so they need to find a way to split snaps between those guys to keep them happy. And then finally, their secondary, they are less experienced from last year, but should be relatively solid. I would say Washington, for them to make the playoffs, they got to find a way to they got to find a way to be able to, if they don't beat Indiana or Oregon, who are on their schedule, they got to find a way to win the rest of their games versus USC and versus Penn State. Those are the two games that I think will really test them. But yeah, my three dark horses are the USC Trojans, the Michigan Wolverines, and the Washington Huskies.
Alrighty. So my dark horse, I only have one dark horse, and that is the Penn State Nittany Lions. A Michigan fan calling Penn State a dark horse. That is in the Big 26. That's crazy. But anyway, this is where we're at. They of course struck gold on the hire in the hiring market with hiring Matt Campbell. He did excellent work at Iowa State over in Ames, leading them to numerous winning seasons, numerous bowl game wins, and overall just redefining a winning culture there. And now he heads over to Happy Valley, and where of course the expectations are sky high, especially after the drama last year with James Franklin and the loss to the UCLA, which ended up leading to his firing, and Drew Aller's injuries. They've got a really solid roster. Like they added a bunch. Of course, they added a bunch of transfers from Iowa State, and like highlighted by pretty much like all of the trades on offense with both offensive linemen Trevor Boer and Brock Riker, and then you got quarterback Rocco Becht who takes the keys to the offense. Becht has worked with Campbell for numerous seasons, I'm sure, and they've built a trusting relationship. So I'm sure this will work out more than fine. We got, and of course, the backfield, they of course got Carson Hansen, who also came from Iowa State, but they also picked up James Peoples, who didn't really wasn't a full-time starter at Ohio State, but had some nice plays for them. So I think he could be a really nice compliment to Hansen in the backfield. And then they got Chase Sowell as a new number one receiver. I really like Chase Sowell. I think he is an excellent wide receiver. I think I think he's gonna be in for a really big season as well. Um, he now takes the number one receiver role in the Penn State offense. And then on defense, Penn State has five transfers that they picked up in the transfer portal on defense. Two on the D line, one linebacker, and a new safety duo, including Jeremiah Cooper and Marcus Neal Jr. Losing AJ Harris is going to be tough to that cornerback core, but having those two new safeties will help. And overall, I think the ceiling for this team could easily be like 10 wins. I could just see. I think this team with their manageable schedule, they have a couple tough games, of course, against Washington. But I think 9, 10 wins is not out of the picture for them. And playoff appearance, that remains to be seen. But I think they're definitely being for a major, major bounce back here.
All right, and now we move on to the teams that we think are most likely to improve from last year. And the team that Brian was just talking about, the Penn State Nittany Lions, are the team that I think is most likely to improve from last year. After being probably the most disappointing team from last year, having national championship expectations and that going all up in flames within the first 6 games of the season, with them losing 3 straight, including to UCLA and to Northwestern. James Franklin was fired, and they ended up going 6-6 and facing Clemson, who was probably the other team that was expected to meet them in the national championship. So whatever bowl game they played should have been called the preseason national championship bowl, but I digress. They hire Iowa State head coach Matt Campbell, who brings in a large portion of his roster from Iowa State from last year with him, along with the other transfers that they got through the portal, which equated to 39 total transfers. This team could be really good if they hit on a lot of the talent that they got from the transfer portal, as well as the fact that, like Brian said, they have an easy Big Ten schedule. They play 3 like tough games. They play USC, Michigan, and Washington. They don't play any of the big 3 in Ohio State, Oregon, or Indiana. Penn State brings in Rocco Becht Sr. as their quarterback through the transfer portal. That they also bring in running backs Carson Hansen and James Peoples at running back. They bring in Iowa State's top 4 receivers from last year. Their offensive line, while they will be down a notch, Matt Campbell believes that they do have a couple potential All-Americans on that O-line. Their defensive line They bring in 8 transfers, including starters from schools like UCLA and Iowa State. So should be really solid. Their linebacker group, while they do lose guys like Dominic DeLuca, they bring in 3 Iowa State transfers. Plus they get Tony Rojas back, so that's a plus. They bring in transfer duo Jeremiah Cooper and Marcus Neal at safety, along with cornerbacks Darius Dixon, Davion Collins. So this Penn State team could be solid. There might be a chance where they end up going 10-2 and making the playoffs. Although I think they would have to go 11-1 for them to make the playoffs, given how weak their schedule is. So yeah, I think Penn State is the team in the Big Ten that is most likely to improve.
Alrighty. So I have four teams that are very likely to improve in the Big Ten. Starting out with the Washington Huskies. Cole had already touched on them a little bit in his dark horses, but they even despite the drama with Damon Williams, I think they're going to be in for a major improvement year. And even though they did lose some major pieces on the roster like Denzel Boston, Jonah Coleman on as weapons on offense, I think they're going to be. I think they do. I think they did retool nicely. Like Cole said, they got a couple really nice recruits at running back, including Brian Bonner, who is an incoming freshman. He was actually right up there with Savion Hyder at the top of the recruits. He was pretty close to him, so I think he could be a really solid running back commanding the backfield. They got Desmond Rosabuck, who's supposed to be their WR1, and Christian Moss from the portal. So I think those two could be a really solid duo for Williams to throw to. The O line remains as has all five returning starters, and then but they only have one transfer on defense, which does worry me. So the defense does worry me, but however the offense. Oh, plus don't forget about tight end Decker DeGraff. He's a really underrated tight end as well. So him, Rosabuck, and Moss could be a really solid pass catching trio for Williams. Plus the running backs they added. Um, I think they could be in for. I think they could be in for an improvement year. Playoff appearance that remains to be seen. It's gonna be a little tough, especially because they still have They have Oregon and USC on their schedule, and Penn State. But we'll see. And then the next team we got is the UCLA Bruins. This is a team that fired Deshaun Foster early in the year after losing in terrible fashion. Then they lose. I think they lost to UNLV, and I can't remember another Group of Five team as well. But either way, it's a new era now. Nico M11 enters year two as a Bruin. And this team's got a lot of underrated talent on offense. They got a bunch. They got that pretty much their entire offense is made up of transfers. They got so many transfers in the portal, including a bunch of new receivers, including Aiden Mizell from Florida, who I thought was really underrated, never really was given a chance, obviously, with how many receivers they had. My boy Samaj Morgan, but he's more like a gadget. And then Landon Ellis and Leland Smith, four new receivers, plus four new starting old linemen. Alex for their left guard. They also got running back Wayne Knight in the portal. And on defense, they got also a bunch of new transfers. They got 7 new transfers, a whole new D line, including Sahir West, Aiden Gobaria, Tyson Ford, and Maxwell Roy. And then yeah, and then so yeah, overall, I think this team is getting. I think this team could easily make a bowl game this year in Bob Chesney's first full season. And then we got the Iowa Hawkeyes. Now this is a team that I feel like. See, they did have a major season last season. They did lose a couple pieces, but overall, I think this team is like this team retooled very nicely, and they returned a lot of starters as well. Even though they did lose Logan Jones on the O line, they got Cade Peeper, who he's supposed to be a first round pick in the upcoming draft in 2027. And on offense overall, I think they are struggling, but defense they do have they return almost all their starters on defense, including new safety duo, including Tyler Brown and Anthony Hawkins. Um, their defense thing is gonna be really solid. It's always solid over there. The defense is always the star of the show there. And then on offense, like I said, Kamari Moulton and Lendon Phillips they got in the portal. I think it's gonna be a really, really good running back duo. And the only reason why I have this team as a progression and not a playoff contender, is even though I think they will win, like I think they will win 9 games again this year. I just don't think this team's like in the playoff contender conversation because of their quarterback situation. They picked up Jeremy Hecklinski, but I'm not a believer in him. I never really trust him. I just don't think he has the traits to really work to really become a capable starting quarterback in the Big Ten. And then Hank Brown, who they picked up from Auburn, who was pretty disasterful when he got playing time alongside Ashton Daniels. Um, Dark days there, but hey, Tigers, War Eagle, you guys got some bright days ahead of you with Alex Galesh. And then my final progression team is the Northwestern Wildcats. I've got a bit of a personal connection to the Wildcats as I live about 30 minutes from their campus. I love the Cats. I love what they've got going on as well. David Braun is an excellent head coach, and he's got this team. He turned this team from bottom feeder to into bowl game contender every year. And I think that's what they're going to be again this year. I think they're going to be a really solid bowl game team. The only thing, obviously, they got a really solid running back duo. They got Joseph Hyman, or no, wait, Joseph Hyman graduated. They have Gavin Sawchik, who they got in the portal from Oklahoma, who I think is going to be a really solid lead back for them. Um, and they got two new quarterbacks in the portal to replace Preston Stone in Nico Marshall from West Virginia and Aiden Childs from Michigan State. Both of which were are pretty underwhelming starters. Like I don't think either of them are gonna be great, are gonna be very good. The one thing that really does keep me positive about the Cats, their defense. Their defense always puts up underrated numbers every year, and Dave Brown always makes his team solid on defense. And then they add two new starters in Jamal Johnson and Kobe McKenzie to the front seven. I think the defense can keep them above water. I think they'll be like a 7-8 win team this year.
All right. Now, for the team in the Big Ten that I think is most likely to take a step back this year, I have the Michigan Wolverines. Now, before Brian gets all mad at me, hear me out. The Big Ten, there's not really any teams that I think will take much of a step back this year, in all honesty. And the teams that I wanted to pick, they either have a weak schedule or they're adding in some pieces that I think could help them stay where they're at. So I had to pick one, and Michigan just happened to be that. I like I said earlier about them, there's a couple questions that I have, specifically, will Bryce Underwood take that next step? Will Kyle Whittingham be what they need to get them back over the hump? And second, they just have a super tough schedule. Like they probably have the toughest, them and Ohio State have the toughest Big Ten schedules and of any Big Ten team. As I said, they play Oklahoma, they play Iowa, they play Penn State, they play Indiana, they play at Oregon, and they play at Ohio State. That's a really tough schedule. And the those are like all potential losses right there. So as I said, I could see this team going 10-2, but I could also see them like going 7-5, like how they did in 2024. So it all depends on their quarterback and their head coach. Hopefully for Brian's sake that the first option happens and they surprise some people, but we'll just have to see what happens.
And the disrespect's crazy, but hey, yeah, that was actually some really reasonable takes, I will admit. But I got for my regression, I have the Illinois Fighting Illini. This is a team that I feel like on paper they're gonna have a good defense because they always do. Brett Bielema always recruits really solid defensive players. The one thing that worries me now is their offense because that was the thing that they had the last couple of years. They actually had a really underrated offense. They had a really underrated offense the last couple of years with some underrated weapons and of course like Luke Altmaier was a very productive quarterback for a couple of years, which makes sense. He learned under Lane Kiffin, so he had a great couple of years there. And now they have Kateen Hauser, who's taken over now as their starting quarterback. And Hauser, I've never been a believer in him. Even though he did a nice little turnaround in East Carolina, he was not very good at Michigan State. And now, I mean, he's going back to the Big Ten. It's just I don't see that really working out. They do have Carson Boyd and Michael Clayton, who they recruited or Carson Boyd's a redshirt freshman, Michael Clayton's their true freshman, but they're definitely not going to be ready to take the keys yet. So that's really what worries me the most. They do have a couple solid running backs, Khalil Valentine, Aiden Lowry, and a solid receiving duo with Hudson Clement and Colin Dixon. Plus, they had Jay Sean Platt in the portal and Alex Perry. And then on defense, they're gonna have a good defense per usual. Their defense, Of course, their safety duo, Mac Resitich and Matthew Bailey, is going to be one of the best in the Big Ten. And then they got two new D linemen and Carter Janke and Darnell Prey to replace the loss of Gabe Jacas, who went to the second round of the NFL draft to the New England Patriots. Overall, I think it's gonna be a down year for the Illini. They do have a very easy schedule, so I could see them like unlike the Michigan Wolverines, they have a very easy schedule. Well, we have a very hard schedule, so I could see them maybe going winning like 8 games again. I think they're more like a 6 or 7 win team. I don't think this team's that good. And then we got the Minnesota Golden Gophers. Um, big reason for this is what is going to happen with Drake Lindsay, as he has had some personal issues in the offseason. In the offseason, of course, he got arrested in the offseason. I'd recommend you guys look that up. So is he really is he going to be in the right mind for this season? And we'll see. I mean, they have a nice running back duo, Darius Taylor and AJ Turner. Taylor especially is really solid, is a really good running back. Plus they have a solid receiving trio too: Jalen Smith, Javon Tracy, plus Perry Thompson, who they got in the portal. The O line's not great, and Caden Helms they got in the portal at tight end. O line's not great though, and defensively, they do have Anthony Smith, who I think is an excellent pass rusher. He had like 11 sacks last year, but other than him, the talent behind them's limited, and the schedule's tougher. So while I love PJ, I like PJ Fleck as a head coach. I don't think this team win. I really don't think this team wins more than 7 games against you. I just really don't think they'll win. They'll win 8 games and win a bowl game again this year.
Alrighty, and now we move on to who we think will come out as the winner of the Big Ten Conference. Now, there's a lot more suspension than there was the last two times, because the last two times it was most obviously going to be Texas Tech for the Big 12 and Miami for the ACC. But this time, it's actually, suspenseful. So my pick to win the Big Ten, drum roll, please. I have the Ohio State Buckeyes. Like when a team has multiple players that I think are Heisman contenders and I can see as Heisman finalists, along with the talent that Ohio State has, it's hard to not pick this team to win their conference. This team is just so talented as they always are. Now, now, do I have my worries? Yes. I mean, there's a reason why Ohio State hasn't won the Big Ten in like what is it now? 5 years? The last time they won was 2020. So
Hmm.
something's got to give for them to win the Big Ten now. I mean, obviously they won a natty a couple years ago and didn't win the Big Ten. So them not winning the Big Ten overall won't matter too much in the long run if they don't win it. But I think this is the year that Ryan Day finally wins the Big Ten championship and Ohio State gets a playoff berth as a top four seed.
Alrighty. Um, now for my pick to win the Big Ten, I also have the Ohio State Buckeyes. I'm still not emphasizing that by the way. You guys, the Ohio State Buck, or just the Ohio State Buckeyes, not because I don't like saying that. But you know what? There's your one for the next couple weeks. Anyway, the Buckeyes, they're gonna win the Big Ten this year. Like I said, it's been a little while for them since they last won. Um, I mean, I could go on and on about how we beat them for how about we went on a 4-year winning streak against them, but they beat us last year, so I can't really do it anymore. But yeah, this is a new era for them. Ryan Day is still the most winning head coach in college football, and they have a very talented roster once again. Jeremiah Smith alone, like he's arguably the most talented player in college football, like I mentioned. Julian Saint, I think he could be in for an even better. I don't know if he'll be. I don't know. He'll be at least. I think he'll at least replicate the numbers from last year, if not improve on them. The O line's still great. Defense is still great. I think even I even think Kenyatta Jackson and Bo Atkinson. I think that edge rush duo is reminiscent of the Bosa days. So sky's the limit for the Buckeyes here. I think they're definitely gonna lock in a top four seed for the playoff bracket, and who knows? We'll see what they can do this year.
All right, now we move on to our other segment of this episode, our top five wide receivers in all of college football.
Yes, indeed. I'm pretty sure that we've got a poll for everyone to vote on picking their most favorite position to watch. I think the most picked position would be receiver by a pretty comfortable margin.
Couldn't agree more, Brian. The receiver is the most, visually pleasing position in all of football. It's one of the premium positions. I'm pretty sure every average Joe would want to be a receiver if they were to play football. I know I would want to be a receiver. So how we're going to do this is pretty simple. We did the same thing with our quarterback and running back lists. We go down from 1 to 5 and give then after that give you our honorable mentions. So without further ado, Brian and I's top 5 wide receivers in all of college football. Starting off with my number one receiver, if it wasn't obvious before, it is Jeremiah Smith, aka Julio Jones 2.0. Honestly, he's a more athletic version of Julio, considering how fluid he moves and how fast he is. Like this guy can just do it all. I can't think of any like big flaw or any like flaw that normally shows itself on the field. This kid is just generational. He's led college football the last 2 years in receiving yards with over 2,500 and receiving touchdowns in 27. There's literally nothing that Jeremiah Smith can't do. He's fast, he's strong, he can just bully players with his size, bully DBs with his size and physicality. He's 6'4", 225, big catch radius. Like, it's just super hard to guard him. There's a reason why teams, for the most part, have either had to bracket him or double him. Like, there's just no way you can stop this guy one on one. Like, you just can't.
Alrighty, coming in my number one wide receiver in college football, I have Jeremiah Smith. This is like the biggest lock of this predictions list of these top five position lists that we've done so far. He's far and away the best receiver in college football. It's not even close. Like like the production, like in addition to the traits, obviously, like Cole is saying, he is Julio Jones 2.0. He's got the fluidity, he's got the one-on-one, he's at the one-on-one jump ball as Julio, and I think he'll be just as a productive receiver as Julio, and hopefully Miami, and I think we could see something similar to where like, although unfortunately when Julio first got into the league, they already had established Matt Ryan. I don't know, and I think hopefully Smith can go to a team with an established quarterback as well. We'll see, but that's a later issue. Either way, Jeremiah is an absolute stud. He is one of the most dominant receivers I've ever seen play college football. Um, and of course, he does have the numbers to back this up, as going over 2,500 yards in the last two seasons is astronomical. And I think he's gonna go absolutely off again this season, and he should easily be a top, and he could easily be a top five pick in the 2027 NFL draft.
Yeah, the fact that Smith doesn't have a Bolitnikov award to his name is just absolute insanity. But anyway, moving on to number two, I have the best freshman from last year in Malachi Tony. Boy, was this kid sensational last year. Led the nation in receptions as a true freshman with 109. He recorded 841 yards after the catch and also put up over 1,200 yards as a true freshman and forced 33 missed tackles after the catch, which was the most in FBS. And all this while having Carson Beck as your quarterback. Not saying Beck was a bad quarterback, but Beck being inconsistent can sometimes limit your play. But with Darian Mensa as his quarterback, that will change. And honestly, like Smith, I don't really see a defense that can really stop him when he gets going. Tony also recorded the most receptions that went for either a first down or a touchdown in the nation with 58. While his while his freshman campaign wasn't as dominant as Jeremiah Smith, he still put up a really dominant performance and had a lot of big performances and big moments in the playoffs that helped compel Miami to the national championship game. I'm really excited to see what he can do this year with Darian Mensa and him being on the other side of another 1,000-yard receiver in Cooper Barkate. The sky is the limit for a kid that just turned 18.
Alrighty, coming in at my number two spot, I also have Malachi Tony. This guy is an absolute monster, and he had and like Cole said, and I completely agree. He had the best freshman season out of any freshman last year, and the sky's absolutely the limit. And I think he's an absolute explosion. I think he's gonna put up very similar numbers to what Jeremiah put up last year, because of course, because now he's got. Last year, he didn't really have too many other receivers to really I mean, JoJo Trader was okay, and then a couple other guys were like fine, but now they got Cooper Barkate, who, as you'll see later, I think is also a really underrated receiver as well to pair next to him. Um, and of course, now an improvement now at quarterback going from Carson Beck to Darian Mensa, who Mensa is way more accurate, way more careful with the football. I think he's, I think Tony is going to be in for a major, major sophomore season. He's one of the, but he is, and he might, and in addition to like him being elite with the production. He's also got arguably the best yak receiver in college football right now. This guy after the catch is incredibly deadly, and he's gonna show and he's gonna do that again this year en route to hope and it's gonna be closely in these two for the Blinicoff Award. I think with Smith and Tony. As much I think it's gonna be go to Smith this year because he hasn't won one yet, but and then maybe. But yeah, it's gonna be a battle to these two for the Blinicoff Award this year, in my opinion.
I can tell you this: if leaves college football without a Biletnikoff Award, the whole Ohio State fan base and a lot of all the Jeremiah Smith fans out there, it's going to be a whole riot if he leaves college without a Biletnikoff Award. Anyway, on to my number three receiver. I have former Auburn, now the University of Texas wide receiver Cam Coleman. Now, if you were to just look at his stats, you'd call me a homer. Why do I have a guy who put up only 700 yards and 600 yards the year before on this list? Now, to know how good Cam Coleman is, you actually have to watch him instead of just read his stats. This guy played in a very putrid Auburn offense his first 2 years at college. Like I'm talking his freshman year, he played in for the 63rd best passing offense in 2024 when he was a freshman. And then the next year, as a sophomore in 2025, he played for the 111th best team passing offense. So, yeah, not ideal. And the thing is, he still put up better stats as a sophomore than he did as a freshman, despite the passing offense being worse. I'm telling you guys, if this guy was not in the same year as Jeremiah Smith, he would probably be wide receiver one in a lot of other different wide receiver classes. And a stat that shows you how good this guy is he has the highest contested catch rate of 20 yards down the field or more, which is at 81.8%, which is the highest recorded in a season since tracking the stat in 2017. So for almost any college receiver over the past 10 years, Cam Coleman has the highest contested catch rate of passes that were thrown 20 or more yards down the field. If Coleman has the season that I think he will, and many other Texas fans think he will, this guy will be a top 10 pick and the second wide receiver off the board in 2027.
Alrighty, coming in my number three spot, I also have Cam Coleman, the most underrated receiver in college football right now. You can't knock the guy for having Josh Daniels and Hank Brown and Jackson Arnold as quarterback the first two seasons. If I had, dude, that's bad. That's like actively bad. That's sickening. But now he goes to a Texas Longhorns offense led by Steve Sarkisian and Arch Manning, who is now also his third season of college football. I can't wait to see what this dynamic duo will get to work on the field. And the one thing I will say about Cam Coleman is he's like his even though his production like hasn't been there because of how awful the offense has been, but that's the main reason why is because of how bad the offense has been. I think the production's all is 100% going to be there this year. My favorite trait about Cam Coleman is how underrated of a deep ball guy he is. This guy's got a deep bag of routes. He's got a bunch of different routes he can use, and then his deep ball is insane. Plus, he's got a quarterback who can throw a very accurate deep ball now in Arch Manning. Look for these two are going to be connecting on some bombs this year, and I can't wait to watch it.
Yep. Now going to the number four receiver on my list, I have KJ Duff from Rutgers. Now, you probably haven't really heard much about this guy because he plays for Rutgers, but Let me tell you, this guy is legit. As last year, he recorded a one over 1,000 yards, which he was sixth among all Power Four wide receivers in receiving yards. He's a big body receiver. He's elite at making contested catches. He has elite body control, and he's a great hands catcher. You know, not like how a lot of receivers try to catch the ball with their body. Ryan Williams. He was also tied for the most contested catches in college football last year with 22. Yeah. If you were to ask me, I would give this guy like a Drake London comparison.
Alrighty, coming in my number 4 spot, I have Deuce Robinson from Florida State. Another guy who's kind of flown under the radar a little bit. Um, Although he does play for a much known, more known school with the Florida State Seminoles. A guy very similar to Cam Coleman. Like he did not have the offense around him. Of course, with Tommy Castellanos as his quarterback and Mike Norvell, who he's still a good offensive mind, but he's a declining offensive mind. And like I said, Castellanos was not is was like he's a pretty mediocre quarterback. I'm not gonna lie. He's a pure runner guy. Didn't have a great arm. Had terrible accuracy. Not very good precision. Not very good velocity. And still, Robinson showed all the traits of being a complete game-changing receiver. Robinson's also got great. He's got great hands as well. Great contested catch guy as well. Very big. Pretty. I think he's like 6'4", 6'5". He's a pretty tall guy as well. Pretty big bodied guy as well. Um, I think he's got all the make, and now with I think he's got pretty solid offense around him now too. He's got with a new ground game with Contravion Wisner from also the University of Texas. Even though he had a little bit of a down year there, I think he's gonna have a better year at FSU. And now and of course the quarterback duo or quarterback competition, I should say, between Ashton Daniels again, he's getting another chance. I don't know how, and Tyler Sperry, who I really like. Tyler Sperry, he should absolutely Norvell should give this kid the starting role and see what this kid's got, and yeah, hopefully these two can become a dynamic duo this year, and then I'm sure the Knowles fans will really appreciate that, and that remains to be seen.
All right. And rounding out my top five receivers at number five, I have the new Indiana receiver, Nick Marsh. Man, this guy, like Cam Coleman, was just played for 2 years in a really bad situation. You know, terrible passing offense, just a team that was a total crap show. But now he gets the chance to show the type of player he really is at Indiana with a new coach, a new quarterback, and just a new system. Nick Marsh is a big body receiver that is great, that has great run after the catch. He has great ability to change directions on hitches and comeback routes, and he has strong hands. He kind of reminds me, I think he'll be what Elijah Surratt was for Indiana, but better. And I had this debate with a lot of people before the draft, and Surratt went third round for some reason. I actually thought he was the better Indiana receiver between him and Omar Cooper. I mean, obviously that debate died down when one went first round and the other went third, but it was close though. It was close. I think I've seen a lot of debate between who's going to be wide receiver one for Indiana, Nick Marsh or Charlie Becker. I think Becker's better suited in the wide receiver two role, but that's just me. I think Marsh is going to be the premier receiver for Indiana this year, although Becker will be one heck of a wide receiver too, probably the best wide receiver two in the nation. But I have Nick Marsh as the fifth best wide receiver in college football this coming season.
Alrighty, coming my number 5 spot, I also have Nick Marsh. Like Cole said, Marsh is very his first 2 seasons are very similar to Cam Coleman's. Of course, with awful quarterback play with Aiden Childs at Little Bro State. You guys are not a great football school, not gonna lie. You guys are a good couple. You guys were really good couple years ago, though. I'll give you all that. But yeah, the last 2 years have not been very eventful there, and it has been hard for Nick Marsh to produce. But he did produce at a decent level, and now he heads to Bloomington, where I think he's going to be in for a major season. Um, of course, he's in a little bit of a battle with Charlie Becker for wide receiver one spot. But I agree with Cole as well in the sense that like I think he's very similar to Elijah Surratt. And I think he'll put up a very similar production. Elijah Surratt, if not better. They have very similar traits as well. They're both big guys who have really underrated, who have really underrated Rack and Yak, like both really underrated, like and just really underrated after the catch in general. I think that'll really, I think that's gonna be on display this season. And it's gonna be, and I think, yeah, Josh Hoover set up very nicely with this receiver duo of Marsh and Becker.
All right. And rounding out our list with our honorable mentions, I have three honorable mentions as usual. I have Deuce Robinson from Florida State. After a few quiet years at USC, he transferred over to Florida State, where he put up over 1,000 yards and was top 10 in the Power Four in receiving yards. He was also top five in yards per route with 3.03, and he had 18 contested catches on the season, which was good for being third among all receivers in college football. And to think he did this while being held back by inconsistent quarterback play. I mean, it's not the same as having, it's not as bad. I'd rather much have Tommy Castellanos at quarterback rather than have, Jackson Arnold or Peyton Thorne, but still not the greatest quarterback play you could ask for. As my second honorable mention, I have another Texas receiver, Ryan Wingo. You can call me a homer, but I think Wingo's that guy. I've been high on him since he was a true freshman. He's got blazing speed. He's a yak monster. He can he's also good at grabbing shots from downfield. He's capable of beating you over the top with his speed. And Texas bringing in Cam Coleman is only gonna, improve him much more. Yeah, make it easier for him to get open looks because you can't double both those guys. So yeah, and then rounding out my final honorable mention, I have Mario Craver from Texas A&M. Craver had 900 yards last year, which was almost the same amount as his fellow receiver from last year, Casey Concepcion, who was drafted in the first round. He was third in yards per route run in the Power Four with 3.25, and he also recorded almost 600 yards after the catch, which was third in Power Four, and forced 22 missed tackles. Now with A&M bringing in Isaiah Horton and Marcel Reed coming back for another season, I can only imagine Craver's numbers are going to improve with him in the wide receiver one role.
Alrighty, as for my honorable mentions, I have four. Starting out, I have Mario Craver, from Texas A&M. Yeah, I think this guy showed a lot. I think he was a really underrated compliment to Casey Concepcion last year. I'm really excited to see how he does now, and as the wide receiver one now. Although they did bring in Isaiah Horton, who I think is an excellent receiver as well. I thought he was excellent at Alabama. I cold already started this up a little bit, but I'm gonna start up again. I thought he was better than Ryan Williams last year. Let's be honest, and he was definitely their second best receiver to Jordan Bernard. So. And I think he's gonna be the same thing with A&M. He's gonna be the second best receiver behind Mario Craver. Those two are gonna be an excellent duo for Marcel Reed this year. And then I got Charlie Becker. Becker, like I said, I have Marsh a little bit higher. I think Marsh is more talented traits, but Becker had the production at the end of the year, man. He was Fernando Mendoza's best weapon down the stretch. In a couple moments, like obviously Omar Cooper and Elijah Surratt also came up in big moments, but so did Charlie Becker. He had a couple really big moments as well, a couple really nice catches throughout the season. I know Cooper caught the game-winning touchdown against Penn State back in late October, and he had a couple like the clutch catches, but so did the clutcher catches, but so did Becker. I think he's gonna be now in for a really big year next to Nick Marsh. And then I got Ryan Wingo. I'm all in on Ryan Wingo, man. I think this guy's an excellent wide receiver. I think he's being a little bit underrated in the media right now. I think he's gonna be a really nice compliment to Cam Coleman. While Coleman's gonna be great for like the downfield shots, Wingo's gonna be the between the chains guy. He's gonna be the third. He's gonna be Arch Manning's third down weapon. He's gonna be the guy who Manning looks for in big moments. I think even more so than Emmett Mosley and Nick Townsend, who those will be good security blankets as well. But no, Wingo is gonna be the main security blanket. I think he's gonna be in for a major season. Great yak guy, great between the chains guy. He's gonna be in for a great year. And then I got Cooper Barkate, who I really like Cooper Barkate as well. I think he had a really productive year last year at Duke, catching passes from Darian Mensah. And now they're gonna be catching passes at the U, and I think it's gonna. I think both him and Tony are gonna be, man. It is gonna be a really interesting competition between these top three wide receiver duos, and Tony and Barcade out of Miami, Coleman and Wingo out of Texas, and um and Marsh and Becker out of Indiana. These three are by far the best wide receiver duos in the country right now, and it's gonna be really interesting to see how these three dynamic duos play out.
Yeah, yeah, no, and don't let us see any Ryan Williams fans or any Alabama fans upset that we didn't have him on here. Sorry, he's gonna have to show us something after he led the nation in drops last year. Also, Brian, I really agree with you. Those are the three best wide receiver duos, but we'd also have to add Ohio State's wide receiver duo to that list just because they have number four, and whoever is their second best receiver along with him, that Smith alone is going to be good enough to put their duo in that conversation. But I digress. That just about wraps up this episode, wraps up this week's edition of the Big Game and Box Score podcast.
Yes, sir. We had a great time making this episode today. Hopefully, we'll see you all for next week's episode.
Indeed, Brian. Just before we go, if you haven't already, please be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It would be very much appreciated. Hope you guys had a great time tuning in, and see you all next week. Peace.
Peace.